Well, welcome everybody. This is John Paul, Dr. Speed Selling. This is the Raging Verbalist, number 179. If you're here for the first time, welcome, welcome. If you're joining us again, appreciate that you're coming back. This is set out onto YouTube and Facebook, and the Facebook group is Position to Win Book. And go check it out there. You can ask all kinds of questions. So hit that subscribe, hit that like, and if you want to be annoyed, hit the notification. And we talk about topics that essentially just push me to rage about them. So with me, as always, is the ever lovely Sandra. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, and Sandra is dealing with some extraneous noise. So if you hear a scream, a shout, or something like that, that means her neighbor's handyman has misused the saw and ice bucket, fingers, digits, take to the emergency room to sew it back on or something, right?
Yes, I have heard the saw and cursing various times when the patio door was open. So hopefully we don't get any of that today.
Yeah, no spurting blood or anything like that. So
that's right.
All right. So what are we talking about today? What is the rage of today?
All right, so we're talking about Memorial Day. So what is the history of Memorial Day?
Well, the history of Memorial Day, which was originally called Decoration Day, was that a few years after the Civil War, and this was like the first big celebration, is that at Arlington Cemetery, what they did is that they had, General Grant and his wife, and had a whole bunch of people there, and speeches were delivered and talking about, kind of the war. And then once those speeches ended, is that parents and children and attendees went out and put flowers on all the graves out in Arlington, which at that point in time was pretty massive, the number of people who were killed in the Civil War. And it was Decoration Day for an extended period of time, and it was all about a remembrance of those who had sacrificed and given their all to keep this a union. And now by 1971, it becomes a federal holiday, and they kind of nail it down. And then somewhere in there, they say, okay, it's that last Monday in May, and make it that day, because it used to be kind of this floating day, and it was you've got to make it a Monday so everybody gets a 3-day weekend. So that's my abbreviated history of Memorial Day, but it's all about remembering those who have fallen. In some ways, it's a nice way to remember everyone that may have been close to you that also is now gone and moved on. So that's my abbreviated history of Memorial Day.
And how will you celebrate Memorial Day?
Well, when I was growing up, we had a very specific way that we celebrated it. Today, since I have now moved away from wherever the various cemeteries are and those types of things, so I always try to take some time on Memorial Day. I mean, it's we can all be so busy, but to really kind of remember these people, remember somebody that had taken the effort and time and made that special inference or that special push in your life. And so, one of the things I'll do is I'll sit down and think about those individuals, those people that, frankly have moved on. And it's a good thing to do, because most of life, you're not that morose about it, but you want to at least do that. And so how are you going to celebrate Memorial Day yourself?
So we usually do the same thing every year, which is go out to the cemetery and put flowers out, or attend as well as attend a memorial service, usually out at the cemetery, that sort of thing. And I think I've been doing that as long as I can remember, either with my grandma or my mom or both sides of the family, just something. And then I do that now as an adult. So just a good thing to do, I think, every year, for sure, taking the time to do that.
Tradition carries on. Absolutely.
Yep. So with that, what was the most disappointing thing to you on Memorial Day?
Well, the tough part about it is that it's in May, and that's my birthday month, so I was always excited about that. And then Memorial Day happened, and you got that extra day off and didn't have to go to school. But somewhere during that Memorial Day weekend, the realization would hit me that there's still like 2, 3 weeks of school left. And it was really hard to get motivated to get back into that whole grind of it. That was usually when I was younger, but I just always remember that was like one of those, I was disappointing about it. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? I want to go out and, have this thing wrap up. But no, it was going to go on. And especially if we were going to go on a driving trip, there was a whole anticipation because, we didn't, I definitely grew up in a non-flying family. It was pack up the car, pack up the camper, and away you go. So that would be one of those things. We rarely went, by the way, to the mountains on Memorial Day weekend because all the crazy tourist people did that, and away you go on that. So yeah, we didn't do that. We actually, took another time to do that. So that was probably my saddest, toughest part about this thing.
All right. And how about, what was your best memory of Memorial Day?
Well, I'm going to have you kick that off. So what was your best memory of Memorial Day? What did you do?
So what we would do, well, okay, it was my mom's dad, so my grandpa on my mom's side. And so he would play in the band. And I can't recall if it was like a local group or like VFW, that sort of thing. It'd be out at the cemetery, they'd do a service, and he played the tuba. Shout out to tuba players. But since there was a lot of us little kids there, the community would kind of put on little games for us to do afterwards. And so I'd have some cousins there or just kids that lived in the area. And that was always a good time. And the thing they did consistently that I remember was they would take a bunch of sand and put like pennies in it and make the kids dig for the pennies, but that was fun. And then you got to keep your pennies. And then the other one was, and I'm pretty sure this was Memorial Day because we didn't usually go there for 4th of July, but there was a barrel that they suspended in the air on a cable and would have 2 fire trucks. And it'd be like tug of war with the barrel with a fire hose. And so the fireman was at the front, and then all the kids got to hold on to the fire hose. And I got to stand at the front. So I was very happy about that. And our team won. So good times for sure.
Not that you're competitive or anything, but yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I still remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember if you had that on your resume when we were talking. Maybe you did.
If not, I should have.
Exactly. One barrel fire hose tug of war contest. Something you always have to remember. So mine was early memories is that I would wake up and go looking, and my mother was my father was in the garage. And go to the garage, and he would be sitting in the garage with his in a lawn chair. And what he would have is he had his old Philco radio. That was the big thing that he bought when he was living in California, because he had gone from New York to California, gotten a job, and went out and bought a Philco AM radio, and had this ancient radio, ancient for my sensibilities. And he would have that, and he'd have to turn that baby on because it was all tubes, warm it up, carefully tune it, and he would listen to the Indianapolis 500, and we would sit there together. And I didn't know anything about racing. I really did like cars, but I would go there, and he would try to explain to me, who the drivers were. Now, he really wasn't a racing fan, but he, for some reason, had gotten turned on by the Indianapolis 500. And each successive years I grew up, I would last a little bit longer. I think the first time I probably lasted about 10 or 15 minutes, because at this point in time, by the way, they never showed the race on television because they were afraid that if they showed it on television, nobody would go to the race. And it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, let's see. Anybody who's going to go to the race, would still watch it on television. But that was the point. And then every year it kept getting a little bit more that I would listen to it. And then eventually they actually put it on television on a delay. So you had to make sure. Now this is before the internet and Twitter and all of that stuff. But then we would watch it on a delay. So that was probably one of my fondest memories, was sitting with him. And in the beginning, I probably was that jumpy, out of control, whatever year old I was. And then eventually I would sit there with him for, 2-3 hours listening as the race went on. So that was a really cool thing. And got to the point of where every year that there was the poll day, that in the newspaper, they would have the picture of whoever won the poll, and in big bold headlines, how fast they went, which I still remember the first time anybody ever broke 200 miles an hour, and it was like a big deal. So that was a big thing, and it was, embedded in my head and continues on even through today and even in my book. Now, speaking of my book, if you don't have it, well, you should get it, especially if you're going to have a summer, you're going to have some time to do some thinking. You want to make your life a little bit better. You want to go do some other things. But what you want to do is you want to go pick up. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, position to win. And you can go pick this up at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, the physical copy. You can also get it at positionwinbook.com, positionwinbook.com. And you can say, John, memorialize it for me. And also available Kindle, Nook, and iBooks. And then on the other side is Remote Work for a Better World, which will tell you how to do better conferences and, in fact, become more successful at these things. And, of course, there's always the available Raging Verbalist mug. Everything tastes a little bit better with the Raging Verbalist mug, in my opinion. There's no empirical evidence of that, but I can say anecdotally, it's always better when I'm drinking my decaf coffee from my Raging Verbalist mug. All right, Sandra, what are we back to? What do we got now?
All right. Did you have any other traditions that you did?
Well, we did go out to the cemetery, usually later in the day, and that was something we did, and that was kind of a special thing. It was a little odd, especially when we were really young. I mean, we didn't have any, pennies and sand to dive for, or, barrels with fire trucks or anything like that. But what we do is we'd go out and see, my grandparents, especially after my grandfather passed away, and we would do that. But the big thing is that we always hoped, if weather permitted, because again, I grew up in Colorado, and for those of you who don't know, it can snow in May. So if it wasn't cold, is that we would, my father would barbecue beans and do all of those things. So yeah, it was very cool.
All right. And I know you put this in the book and you talk about it, the Indianapolis 500 a lot, which we just did. But how did the Indy 500 get to be so big?
Well, I think what the Indianapolis 500 did is that as it was progressing, as it was moving on and getting out there, is that it just seems like it just kept growing and growing, and it was a tradition around Memorial Day, and they were smart to pick that because they could get more people there. And I remember when they first started getting 100,000 people and then a few 100,000 people. And it was a way for people, in some ways, it's like the Super Bowl of open wheel racing in the United States. And it attracted people from all over the world to come and do it and prove their stuff. So I think it got really big because it had this uniqueness to it. In fact, there were a lot of teams that would, especially at one point in time, that would come and try their mettle and try to do those things. And it just kept growing. And they bill it as the greatest spectacle in racing. I'm sure there's some people around the world that would question that, but they get massive, massive crowds. And I never ever went there. Quick side story is that I got through watching the race, and I said to myself, I'm going to go to that race next year. And at the time, the only way to find out how much a flight would cost is you had to call on the phone. So I got out the yellow pages, looked up the phone numbers of these airlines, started calling them, and found who would actually go to Indianapolis directly from Denver and started building a whole budget on that, to which my father said, listen, we are not flyers, we're drivers, which I said, perfect. We could drive to Indianapolis. How far could it be? Which he pointed out was a little bit too far from Denver.
And what do you think will happen this year with the Indianapolis 500?
Fastest field ever. Interesting how the teams have kind of changed over time. If you've never seen it, to me, it's a very fascinating thing to watch, and really can get you, kind of get you excited and going. But what I think is going to happen is Elio Castroneves has a chance to become the only person who could be the 5-time winner. The front of the field looks really solid. As they say, you have to make it to the end to win. And I'm looking forward to a very exciting race. And yes, I will be watching it moment by moment. Then we'll probably do a little update on it for everybody. But if you haven't seen it, you haven't watched it, you got to check it out, because to me, I think it is a very interesting amount of strategy. So it's not a sprint; it is definitely a marathon.
And what are some of the positive things people can do on Memorial Day?
If you've never done this, my suggestion is take out a sheet of paper and a pen. You can use, open up a file on your computer, but write down all the people that you've lost, the people you want to remember, and go down that list and look at each of those and have a little remembrance, have a little understanding, and that way they're never forgotten forever. The most important thing you can do on Memorial Day, in my opinion, is do that, is to memorialize those who gave so much. Maybe you don't even think about that when you're young, but gave so much to you to make you who you are today. And by doing that, I think it'll make you a better person. I think it makes you a stronger person, and more importantly, gives you a better outlook on life. So what I can say is enjoy this Memorial Day, make it safe, don't be crazy, and do all those things that you think you want to do. But really do spend some time, especially if you have a family, spend some time and call everybody up and just get together, even if you have to do it virtually, and make sure that you remember all those who have given so much for all of us. And for myself, John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and the ever lovely Sandra, this has been Raging Verbalist 179, and we hope you have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you on the next episode.